Missouri, a state crisscrossed by the mighty Missouri and Mississippi rivers, serves as a vital link between the eastern and western United States. Bordered by 8 different states, it offers a stunning landscape, making it not just a fantastic place to visit, but also a beautiful state to call home. Missouri is known for its expansive national parks and vibrant cities like St. Louis and Kansas City, which reflect both the state's natural beauty and its urban dynamism. However, this gateway to the Wild West holds more than scenic vistas and bustling cities. It's a state that has witnessed its fair share of tumultuous history and challenges. Missouri today grapples with a serious problem: gun violence. In fact, it ranks among the top states in the country for firearm-related deaths, homicides, and gun ownership per household. Out of all 50 states, Missouri sits alarmingly high, placing 5th for gun-related fatalities. To put that into perspective, the state's average firearm death rate stands at 24.2 per 100,000 residents, well above the national average. This crisis, while now deeply entrenched, saw a significant uptick after 2007. Before that year, gun violence fluctuated, sometimes spiking but often stabilizing. So what changed in 2007? Missouri repealed a long-standing law that required strict firearm licensing. This law, first enacted in 1921, had ensured that individuals seeking to own a gun needed rigorous background checks and approval from law enforcement. Once that safeguard was removed, the state saw a sharp rise in gun-related incidents. The numbers are staggering. Homicides involving firearms jumped by 25% to 47%, and suicides by firearms also surged. When we think of a state grappling with gun violence, one might wonder where this violence is most concentrated. A quick search for the most dangerous cities in America often brings up Missouri, specifically St. Louis and Kansas City. These 2 cities consistently rank in the top 10 most dangerous cities nationwide, with St. Louis leading the way. St. Louis, a city with a rich cultural history and once known as a vital hub for trade and innovation, now faces an unenviable reputation. For 7 consecutive years, it held the highest murder rate in the country. While there has been a slight decrease in recent years, the city still records an unsettling 69.4 homicides per 100,000 people. The problem isn't just the number of murders, but also the fact that many remain unsolved. Since 2014, there have been over 1,000 unsolved homicide cases in St. Louis alone. The city's police force is understaffed, struggling with budgetary constraints, which in turn hampers its ability to solve cases and maintain public safety. St. Louis is just one example of many American cities wrestling with these issues, but its situation is particularly dire. Recruiting new police officers has become increasingly difficult due to high workloads, long hours, and the sheer emotional toll of dealing with violent crime daily. Kansas City, while less notorious than St. Louis, has also seen a significant rise in crime. The city's police department has turned to community organizations to address the root causes of violence, such as poverty and mental health issues. These are key drivers of the crime surge, and efforts are being made to alleviate these pressures. However, the challenges remain immense. Beyond the issue of gun violence, Missouri has long grappled with the scourge of drug abuse, earning a notorious reputation in the 2000s as the methamphetamine capital of America. During that time, meth seemed to permeate every corner of the state. It was so widespread that it wasn't uncommon to encounter it in seemingly every neighborhood, hotel, or back alley. What made Missouri a hotspot for meth was the sheer number of meth lab busts, with most of these labs being small, home-based operations. Hospitals and emergency rooms were flooded with severe cases of meth addiction, as the drug's availability and affordability devastated communities. Fortunately, over the years, there has been a notable decline in meth-related issues. Law enforcement crackdowns, along with stricter regulations on the sale of pseudoephedrine, a key ingredient in meth production, contributed to this reduction. Both the number of lab raids and drug seizures have decreased significantly at the local level. However, this doesn't mean Missouri is free from its drug problems. Far from it. Missouri consistently ranks high among states in terms of substance abuse, remaining in the top 6 states for drug use. In 2020, Wallet Hub even ranked Missouri as the #1 state for drug problems. While methamphetamine may no longer dominate the headlines, the opioid crisis has taken center stage. Much like the rest of the United States, Missouri has seen a sharp rise in opioid-related overdoses. By 2020, opioids were a leading cause of drug-related deaths in the state. So why does Missouri continue to struggle with such high rates of drug abuse? A mix of factors, including inadequate law enforcement strategies and systemic failures, contribute to the issue. While the state has implemented programs aimed at tackling substance abuse and mental health problems, these efforts have not been particularly effective. Missouri ranks among the worst states for drug rehabilitation and recovery services, with residents often lacking access to the necessary support and resources to overcome addiction. Missouri's challenges go beyond violence and substance abuse. It is also deeply affected by racial discrimination. Missouri ranks among the top 10 states with the highest number of racial discrimination complaints. The racial disparities are stark. For example, the average income for white households is nearly double that of black households in the state. Over 25% of black residents in Missouri live in poverty, a rate that is also twice as high as that of white residents. Racial inequality extends into the justice system as well, and nowhere is this more evident than in the city of Ferguson, a suburb of St. Louis. Ferguson gained national attention in 2014 after the tragic shooting of Michael Brown, an unarmed black teenager, by a police officer. Brown's death sparked protests and riots, revealing long-standing tensions between the African American community and law enforcement. A federal investigation that followed exposed widespread racial bias within Missouri's institutions. One glaring example was that 90% of the instances of police violence in Ferguson targeted African American residents. The unrest in Ferguson highlighted a disturbing pattern. Many law enforcement officers viewed black residents not as community members deserving protection, but as potential criminals and sources of revenue for the city through fines and citations. This approach not only fueled distrust between the police and African American communities, but also led to systemic inequalities that persist to this day. The grand jury's decision not to indict the officer involved in Brown's death further ignited racial tensions, leading to a national conversation about policing, race, and justice in America. As we delve deeper into Missouri's complex crime history, we must revisit the topic of organized violence, particularly gang and mafia-related crimes. While overall crime rates have seen a decline in the state, gang violence has persisted, contributing to Missouri's troubling homicide statistics. For many young people, joining a gang in Missouri is seen as a form of protection from rival gangs, while for others, gangs serve as a substitute for family. At the extreme end, these gangs can evolve into more sophisticated criminal organizations, resembling the mafia. Kansas City, in particular, has a deep-rooted mafia history. Known as the Kansas City Mafia, this criminal organization was largely made up of Italian Americans and operated with significant influence during much of the 20th century. Let's explore a bit of that history. The origins of the Kansas City Mafia can be traced back to the DiGiovanni brothers, two Sicilian mafia members who fled to Kansas City and established a thriving criminal empire. Their wealth and power grew substantially during Prohibition, a period when the production, import, and sale of alcohol were illegal in the United States. The mafia capitalized on this opportunity, smuggling liquor and making vast profits in the process. Over time, however, internal conflicts fractured the mafia into warring factions, leading to violent turf wars. One of the most infamous battlegrounds was Kansas City's River Market District, a vibrant commercial area today, but once a site of bloody clashes between rival mafia factions. Despite this dark history, the influence of the Kansas City Mafia has waned dramatically over the decades. Today, it's estimated that fewer than a dozen members remain active, primarily involved in smaller-scale crimes like illegal gambling, loan sharking, and some extortion activities tied to drugs and the adult entertainment industry. Speaking of the adult entertainment industry, it leads us to another critical issue plaguing Missouri: human trafficking. Strip clubs, which are prevalent in both Kansas City and St. Louis, have been identified as hotspots for this disturbing crime. The presence of these industries has made Missouri a significant destination for human trafficking, placing it fourth in the United States for reported cases. Human trafficking doesn't discriminate. Its victims can be anyone, regardless of age, race, nationality, social class, gender, or sexual orientation. However, certain groups are more vulnerable. According to various reports, women and children are among the most targeted victims, with an estimated 1 in 5 trafficking victims being a child. These children are often exploited in forced begging, child pornography, or child labor. The methods traffickers use to entrap their victims are sinister. They often employ psychological manipulation, stalking, and brainwashing, especially when targeting minors. In Missouri, much of the sex trafficking is facilitated through online platforms and illicit activities in motels. Adult and teenage women make up the majority of human trafficking victims, and traffickers often lure these women by feigning a sense of care or offering false promises of assistance, only to gradually ensnare them into the sex trade.